a company of our own. My God, we've been best friends for 7 years. Of course we should start a company. When he came up with the name Apple Computer, I never asked him where he got the idea, but I figured he might have apple trees in that orchard up in Oregon. You know, or it might have been some other kind of orchard. He got the name from Apple Computer, or it just popped in his head. I don't ask those questions. Steve doesn't tell where he gets ideas, so we'll never know where it really came from, if it has a source. And we decided to start Apple, but I said, I owe everything to Hewlett-Packard. So I went to Hewlett-Packard. I told them, please, you can build this computer for $800, run programs in basic language, and get the answers on your home TV. They had a lot of engineering product type objections to the product and couldn't quite justify it, so Hewlett-Packard turned it down. Next thing, this is going to be the Apple I. We go into business, you know, we invest a few $100. I sold my most valuable possession in the world, my Hewlett-Packard calculator. And Steve sold a van, and we got some money, paid a guy to lay out a PC board, and Steve called me one day at work and said, I got a $50,000 order. What? My salary was $24,000 a year. You got a $50,000 order? What the heck? The one computer store in our area had seen me demonstrating this thing at the club, and they wanted to buy 100 completely built computers, we sold them as boards, for $500 each. Whoa! We came down to pricing it, and Steve said, what do we price it at? And I figured add a third, 667. And I said, 660, 666. I like repeating digits. That was what we priced this Apple I at. Neither of us knew that was a magic number. And that was the Apple I. We started getting a little bit of fame. We got noted in all these magazines covering the little small computer kits coming out. And ours was the different one. Ours was built with enough on the whole board to run a computer language. Bill Gates had written a BASIC. His name was a little bit famous. I thought, what if I write a computer language, BASIC? Sure, I've never programmed BASIC in my life. I have to learn it. Sure, I've never taken a class in writing computer languages, but you know what? Every step of the way, you don't have a computer unless you've done every one of the jobs. I had to do it, or I didn't have a complete enough computer to run my programs. So I went and I designed a BASIC, wrote a BASIC, thinking, hey, man, I'll get famous like Bill Gates. I'm too shy to ever raise my hand, but people will hear my name if I write something, do some good work. And I wrote the BASIC. So we had this complete computer, and we're getting a little bit of fame. In 3 months, I designed a computer from the ground up based on color. That was the Apple II. I designed little circuits that would put out the color timing signals for television sets with almost no parts, and I condensed all the parts of the Apple I. Half as many parts, 10 times the computer. Nobody ever expected to have color on a TV set. Nobody expected to have graphics on a TV where you could type a 5 into one location of memory and a blue square would pop up on your TV set. You instantly knew that by changing all the numbers in memory, you could make colors move around on a screen. It was so obvious. We had high resolution, where individual pixels you could program into tiny shapes. None of these things had ever been imagined that they would even come to low-cost computers. So this was a big product, the Apple II. It was the one that was going to change the world, but we had to sell 1,000 of them. We had to build 1,000 of them. The way we built the Apple I's, Steve Jobs, using his phone in his bedroom, we really didn't use the garage much more than final assembly, but the garage was close to our hearts because that was where we demonstrated our computer. We didn't have a phone in the garage. In his room, Steve would call the magazines for publicity, he would call the parts suppliers for parts, he would call the stores to get us sales, and we'd drive around our car to get other sales, and so Steve got us 30 days credit on the parts, and we could build them into computers, drive them down to the store, and get paid cash in 10 days. That's how we did it with no money for the Apple I. But now we needed $250,000 to build 1,000 Apple IIs. We knew this was the hottest product ever. My engineer friends at Hewlett-Packard were saying, you know, this is the best product I've ever seen, even they were saying, even though Hewlett-Packard turned me down a total of 5 times. So Steve Jobs, the 4th times had to do with these computers, and 5th time something else. Something similar. So anyway, Steve said, I'm still working at Hewlett-Packard. We found an investor that was willing to give us $250,000, but I had to leave Hewlett-Packard. And I said, that's my job for life. My lifetime security, be an engineer with other engineers. I like designing computers just as my hobby on the side. I can do that on my own. So I told him no. And then Steve Jobs got all my relatives and friends to call me up and say, take the money, take the money. And one friend called me up and he said, Steve, and he was my best computer friend of my life, Alan Down. He called me up and said, Steve, take the money, you know, become and be an engineer, turn into a manager, and get rich. That's why you do it. And then he said, or you can take the money, be an engineer, and stay an engineer and get rich. And that second part was what I needed. I wanted to be the engineer that stays in the lab my whole life, kind of a Thomas Edison type. So I changed my mind, left Hewlett-Packard that day, and we started Apple. Our first computer, it was a lot harder job for people like Steve Jobs and our marketing person, Mike Markle, who put the money in, to convince the public that computers had a place in the home. Everything from the style of the first computer ever with a plastic case, you know, it was a much harder job than designing a computer that could fit that role, or it was at least equally hard. So they were out there trying to change the world. I was just trying to design the best products for people that were affordable. And it was just a great, great combination, Steve Jobs and myself. His role was to learn to be an executive and run every department of a company. We defined that on day one. That's what he would do. I would do the engineering and was critical in the engineering for the next couple of years. We had very few engineers. And we had a few other people that helped run the company. But our product was slow. It used a cassette tape recorder for all the programs. When you turned the computer on, it went beep. And yes, it was running one whole